It all began on a movie set. A film that would become iconic not just for its action, but for what it sparked off-screen. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, 2004. That's where Brad Pitt met Angelina Jolie. At the time, Brad was married to Jennifer Aniston, Hollywood's golden couple. But something shifted on that set. Something unspoken, yet powerful. Angelina later confessed in an interview that she and Brad had developed a friendship while filming, and that it turned into something more towards the end of the shoot. Brad, on the other hand, remained silent for a long time. But the chemistry was visible. Too visible to ignore. By early 2005, rumors exploded. Brad and Jennifer had separated. The media went wild. Jennifer Aniston, heartbroken and quiet, became a symbol of betrayal in the eyes of fans. Angelina, already controversial for her edgy persona and past, was now labeled the other woman. And Brad, he was caught in the middle of Hollywood's most dramatic love triangle. But despite all the noise, Brad and Angelina, now dubbed Brangelina, began their journey. Slowly, cautiously. Public appearances were rare, but the paparazzi were relentless. Every glance, every touch, every moment was captured and picked apart. By 2006, Angelina confirmed she was pregnant with Brad's child. It was official. The world gasped, some in joy, others in judgment. They traveled the world, adopted children, and seemed to live a life that was both glamorous and grounded in humanitarian causes. From Cambodia to Africa, they were not just actors, they were symbols of something bigger. A global power couple. They raised 6 children together: Maddox, Pax, Zahara, Shiloh, and the twins, Knox and Vivian. Each child had their story. Their adoption stories were often shared with the press, sometimes praised, sometimes criticized. But the family looked strong. Unusual, yes, but close-knit. They didn't marry for years. Angelina once said, "We're very much committed, and that's enough for us." But in 2014, after a decade together, they finally tied the knot in a quiet ceremony at their estate in France. Their children wrote the vows. It was beautiful, it was raw, it felt real. But real doesn't always last. Behind the glamour, cracks had begun to form. Sources close to the couple began to whisper about tension. Brad's drinking, Angelina's controlling nature, the stress of raising 6 kids while constantly traveling, the pressure of fame, the emotional baggage each of them carried. Angelina had always been complex. Haunted by her past, her father's abandonment, her own battles with mental health. Brad, too, wasn't without scars, a man searching for purpose, often struggling with addiction and expectations. Then came that flight, September 14, 2016, the day everything fell apart. The family was flying on a private jet. What happened on that plane remains shrouded in mystery. But what's confirmed is this: an altercation took place between Brad and their son Maddox. Reports claimed Brad had been drinking. Angelina, alarmed, took action. 5 days later, she filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The world was stunned. Brangelina was over. But this wasn't a normal breakup. This was a war. What followed was a custody battle that played out like a courtroom drama, splashed across headlines for years. Angelina wanted sole custody. Brad fought back. Accusations flew. Allegations of abuse, of manipulation, of instability. The media fed on it. The fans were divided. Some stood by Brad, others believed Angelina. But one thing was clear: the children were at the center of it all. Brad admitted in interviews that he had been drinking too much. That he had to change. That he had entered rehab, trying to become a better father. He spoke about regret, about growth, about pain. Angelina remained more private, but her actions spoke louder. She kept the kids close, moved with them often, and limited their contact with Brad. Years passed. Court dates came and went. Brad was granted more custody at one point, but Angelina appealed. Maddox, now older, reportedly distanced himself from Brad. The bond was broken. Public opinion shifted over time. Some felt Angelina was being too strict, others believed Brad wasn't doing enough. But beneath the legal war, there was something more tragic: a family torn apart. A love story turned into a legal file. The world that once celebrated Brangelina now watched them burn out, slowly, painfully. And through all this, neither of them remarried. Brad dated, rumored to be linked with various women, but nothing serious. Angelina, too, stayed single. It was as if that chapter, the Brangelina era, had closed permanently. Yet, something remained. In 2020, During the pandemic, there were quiet whispers of healing. Brad was seen leaving Angelina's house once or twice. No one knew why. Some speculated it was about the kids. Others hoped for a reconciliation. But nothing materialized. And then came Brad's Oscar win in 2020 for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He thanked his kids, subtly. No mention of Angelina. She, too, returned to the screen, focused on her activism, her children, her work with the UN. But the shadow of their past still lingered. In interviews, Angelina often talks about pain, about survival, about fighting for her family. Brad, too, speaks of growth, of learning to love himself again. Two people, once madly in love, now living parallel lives, connected by children, by memories, by scars. And maybe that's what makes this story so haunting. Because it wasn't just a Hollywood breakup. It was the breakup, the one that felt too big to fail. The one that made millions believe in fairy tales, only to remind us that love, even the most passionate kind, can dissolve into silence. But here's the twist. Despite all the bitterness, the battles, the distance, neither Brad nor Angelina has ever spoken publicly against the other in detail. No interviews dragging each other. No books exposing secrets. Just subtle silence. As if, deep down, the respect remains. Or maybe the pain is just too deep to articulate. Either way, the love story of Brangelina didn't end with betrayal or hatred. It ended with wounds. And maybe, just maybe, some wounds are too sacred to expose. Because behind the flashbulbs, the fame, the fortune, they were just two flawed human beings, trying to build something real in a world that's anything but. And somewhere, in a quiet room, maybe Angelina still watches Mr. and Mrs. Smith with a strange smile. Maybe Brad still looks at old photos and wonders how it all slipped away. Maybe, but that's a story only they know. And maybe, just maybe, they're not done telling it.